As I read today, imagine that you are an architect. Think about what you would do to make sure that the building is rat proof. Okay, rat history. Rats started scurrying around about 65 million years ago as the dinosaurs began to die out. Over time, they grew smaller and adapted to virtually every environment, eventually attaching themselves to humans about 10,000 years ago. Since then, rats have become one of the most successful mammals on the planet. The first rats. Rats belong to a family of animals called Muridae. Millions of years ago, Muridae animals burrowed through the landscape of present-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. These animals adapted and developed different characteristics, resulting in over 500 different species. One of these species, Carnimida, evolved in Southeast Asia about 3.5 million years ago. Through a process called anagenesis, Carmida changed so much that it eventually became an entirely different species, Rattus. What can you tell what the word anagenesis means? Rattus. The first rats lived without the help of humans. They dug homes into riverbanks, swam through swamps, and fished in rivers. On the Indian subcontinent, a region that includes present-day Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan, these rats grew larger, darker, and developed long, naked tails to help them climb through the thick forest. They reproduced quickly and in great numbers, and lived in groups known as colonies. This Rattus species is more commonly known today as the black ship or roof rat. This tells us about the history of the black rat. So what can we expect the author to talk about next? Okay, cool climate rats. Rattus did not stay put. They spread north, arriving in the cooler climate of northeastern China and as far north as present-day Siberia. These rats grew bigger, furrier, and stronger. Only slightly longer, but twice the weight. The species is known as Rattus norvegius, or the Norway rat. Other common names for this species are brown, wharf, and sewer rat. The name of this species is a little confusing because these rats are rarely brown, but tawny, gray, creamy, white, black, blonde, albino, and ginger in color. Hitching a ride. Rats soon learned the advantages of living with humans. Not only did humans supply rats with an endless supply of food waste, they also provided shelter. Rats tunneled under human dwellings and set up camp. Before long, rats and humans were inseparable. Where people went, rats followed. Beginning in 1063, European Christians launched a series of military campaigns against non-Christians. They wanted control of the Holy Land, or present-day Israel and Palestine. These campaigns lasted about 200 years. Armies traveled between Europe and the Middle East. Black rats hitched a ride with these travelers and arrived in Europe. Picture here of the Norway rat as a European species. Here's a picture. It says many rats came to Europe from the Holy Land during the series of military campaigns called the Crusades. So, what are some connections we can make? On the backs of traders. Rats really started getting around when trade opened up between Asia and Europe. Beginning in the 1300s, Europeans began searching the markets of Asia for silk, spices, and tea. They arrived in huge ships and left heavy with cargo. Norway rats were hiding in the overloaded holds of the ships when they set sail. The rats quickly got comfortable in Europe and spread out as Europeans colonized North and South America. Outnumbered. While black rats were the first Rata species, They were unable to hold their own when Norway rats arrived in Europe and North America. Norway cousins are simply stronger and more powerful. Their extra bulk makes them especially suited to colder regions of northern climates. Over time, Norway rats outnumbered black rats in both Europe and North America. Today, black rats are found in the warmer climates of South America and Africa, as well as the palm trees of Southern California. Rats sometimes nest in palm trees like these in California. Why were these two types of rats in competition? Black Death. In 1347, a terrible disease swept through Asia and Europe, killing millions of people. Victims suffered horribly for 4 or 5 days and were usually dead within a week. Symptoms included high fever, chills, and painful lumps in the groin, armpits, and neck. These lumps, called bobos, filled with blood, eventually turning black as the victim died. This disease became known as the bubonic plague, or the Black Death. How long were rats in Europe before the plague happened? Fear and panic. No one understood the disease at the time. They only knew that the plague victims suffered terribly before finally dying. It was not until 1894 that scientists finally knew where to cast the blame: fleas. The rat flea, Xanthilla cephalus, which clings to the rat's fur, feeds on an infected rat and picks up the plague bacteria, Yersinia pestis. The bacteria are transferred to human victims when the flea dines on human blood, their second favorite meal. Fleas carried by rats spread the Yersinia pestis bacteria, which caused the bubonic plague. Millions of people died from the plague. How can you summarize the process of how a human got the plague? Crawley fact: rat biting. In the late 1800s, rats were used for sport in Europe and the United States. Rat baiting involved throwing rats to their doom by the hundreds. Pits, usually in the cellars of taverns, were dug and lined with tin to make it impossible for the rats to claw their way out. Sackfuls of rats were then added to the pits, and dogs were allowed to chase and kill them. Spectators watched and egged the dogs on. They took bets on how many rats each dog could kill. The owner of the most bloodthirsty dog was declared the winner. The need for rats to fuel the sport became so great that rat catching became a profession.